A medieval manuscript page. Inked figures. One sword raised. One buckler pressed forward. The caption is short. The moment is frozen. Modern fencing masks. Steel hits steel. The movement doesn't look quite like the drawing. Two historians stare at the same image. One says, "It's about controlling the bind." The other says, "No, it's about seizing initiative before the bind happens." Same page, same swords, different answers. And that's the mystery. We have the manuals. We have the drawings. We even have the verses, but we don't have the missing key that makes them unambiguous. What if the lost trick isn't hidden in the sword, but in what the book refuses to say? What a fight book actually is. When people hear medieval fencing manual, they imagine something like a YouTube tutorial. Step 1. Stand like this. Step 2. Cut like this. Step 3. Profit. That's not what these books are. They're called Fechtbücher, fight books, and they're not self-contained instruction manuals. They're records of embodied skills, memory aids, compressed knowledge. They assume something crucial. You already trained with a master. The earliest known European fencing manual we have is the Royal Armoury's MS 1.33, early 14th century, sword and buckler. It shows a priest teaching a student, Latin text, German fencing terminology, unknown author. It looks instructional, but it isn't complete instruction. It shows positions. It names plays. It records a system. But it does not walk you from zero to mastery. And it's not alone. Across Europe, thousands of primary fight book sources survive, in German, Italian, French, and beyond. Some are polished, some are fragmentary, some survive in multiple versions that don't quite match. This isn't one mysterious book. It's an entire tradition, and yet some techniques remain debated. Not because we lack the pages, but because we lack the room they were taught in. The manuals were sometimes written like code. Let's move to the German tradition. At its center stands Johannes Lichtenauer. What survives of his teachings is something called the Zettel, a mnemonic poem, short, cryptic verses. They read less like instructions and more like riddles. They don't explain, they point. The verses were designed to help trained students remember orally taught lessons, and to obscure meaning from outsiders. This wasn't accidental vagueness. It was intentional encryption. If you already trained under a master, the verse triggers memory. If you didn't, it's nearly useless. And here's the problem. The masters are gone. The oral layer is gone. All we have are the cryptic lines. So modern interpreters step in. One group reads a verse and sees aggressive forward pressure. Another reads the same verse and sees a defensive bait and counter. Both claim fidelity. Both can produce something that works. Because the poem never told you exactly how. It assumed you already knew. The lost trick might not be hidden footwork. It might be timing, distance, pedagogy, things that are almost impossible to encode in verse. The pages are loud, about the end result. Now zoom in on the structure of these books. Many fight books show the endpoint of an action. The perfect captured moment. Sword extended. Opponent controlled. Victory implied. But how did they get there? Often, that's not shown. The transition is compressed or skipped entirely. Captions are brief. Sometimes just a phrase. Sometimes just a title. Here's why decoding breaks. First, missing intermediate steps. Second, unstated assumptions, like standard footwork habits that everyone just knew. Third, vocabulary drift. Words shift meaning over centuries. Fourth, translation ambiguity. Fifth, illustrations that prioritize clarity symbolism, or status over literal motion accuracy. If the book is a memory aid, then the thing we're missing is the memory. And without it, reconstruction becomes interpretation. A second tradition, same problem. Let's shift to Italy. Enter Fiore dei Liberi. His work, Fior di Battaglia, survives in multiple copies. Some were dedicated to Niccolò III d'Este. The ordering of techniques differs between manuscripts. This is a more structured presentation, clearer in many ways. And yet, ambiguity survives. The illustrations show joint locks, throws, blade engagements, armored techniques, but they cannot encode how much pressure to apply, exactly when to move, how fast to shift weight, what success means in that moment. Does success mean injuring the opponent, disarming them, stalling for advantage, killing them? Context changes everything. Different country, different language, same gap. The body isn't fully on the page. Context shift, Gladiatoria and Talhofer. Now we complicate it further. Consider armored combat. The Gladiatoria tradition focuses on armored dueling, structured sequences, weapon progressions, formal framing. Armor changes the game. Suddenly, cutting is less effective. Thrusting into gaps matters more. Grappling becomes central. Now compare that with Hans Talhofer and his 1467 manual. Talhofer covers armored combat, fighting on foot, fighting on horseback, and even judicial duels, including the infamous man versus woman trial by combat format. The rules change the technique. If it's a judicial duel, survival under defined rules matters. If it's battlefield combat, objectives shift. If it's armored, targeting changes. The same move in different contexts can mean entirely different things. Targeting shifts, tempo shifts, risk tolerance shifts. So when modern interpreters ask, "What does this technique mean?" the real question might be, in what situation? Without that context, decoding floats. The investigation, the Decode lab. Modern reconstruction is not guesswork, it's experimental archaeology of movement. Researchers and practitioners loop constantly between practice with accurate equipment, close reading of text and image, critical analysis of language, pressure testing under resistance. But they need criteria. So imagine a checklist. Text, image, fit. Does the interpretation actually match what's written and drawn? Internal consistency. Does it harmonize with adjacent plays? Cross-source triangulation. Does a similar idea appear in another manuscript? Biomechanical plausibility. Does it work with real human joints and realistic weapon mass? Tactical plausibility. Does it solve a problem a fighter would actually face? Stress testing. Does it survive resistance? Not cooperative drilling? Here's the conflict. Different groups weight these differently. One group prioritizes visual fidelity. Another prioritizes sparring success. One group favors caution and safety. Another favors aggressive initiative. So disagreement persists. Because decoding isn't uncovering a secret key. It's choosing the least wrong interpretation under constraints. Case File 1. The 1.33 problem. Return to Royal Armories. MS. 1.33. Priest and student. Sword and buckler. Repeated positions. Two modern reconstructions emerge. Version A emphasizes binding the opponent's blade and maintaining pressure. Safety first. Structured control. Version B emphasizes immediate initiative, striking before a stable bind forms. Aggressive dominance. Both interpretations can pass drills. Both match parts of the manuscript. But they produce different tactical priorities. Is the system about securing safety first? or about seizing initiative immediately. The manuscript doesn't say explicitly, because the classroom is missing. Case File 2. The Zettel Problem. Back to Johannes Lichtenauer. A verse references acting before and after. What does that mean? Temporal control? Psychological initiative? Physical blade engagement timing? One school interprets it as seizing initiative pre-contact. Another interprets it as regaining initiative after displacement. The wording is sparse, metaphoric, designed to conceal. So a single concept branches into multiple modern schools. Each claims authenticity. Each cites the same verse. The ambiguity is baked in. Case File 3. The Armored Duel Problem. Look at armored combat from Gladiatoria. Now compare it to unarmored longsword in Hans Talhofer's 1467 manual. A technique that looks similar visually may function completely differently under armor. Without armor, a cut might end the fight. With armor, you need to have sword, thrust into gaps, wrestle. Now layer in judicial duel rules. In some contexts, certain actions are forbidden. In others, encouraged. When the rules shift, optimal technique shifts. So what are we decoding? A move? Or a decision shaped by rules, equipment, and objectives? Without full context, interpretation fragments. The illusion of certainty. Watch enough demonstrations and something strange happens. Every group sounds absolutely certain. The stance is precise. The terminology is confident. The explanation feels airtight. One instructor insists this play is about controlling the bind. Another says it's clearly about breaking measure and striking first. Both cite the same manuscript. Both move with authority. And that confidence is convincing. But here's the tension. Expertise doesn't erase disagreement. It sharpens it. The deeper scholars go into the text, the more the gaps stand out. Certainty becomes performance. Interpretation becomes identity. And suddenly, the debate isn't about steel anymore. It's about which uncertainty you're willing to accept. The trial. Now imagine 3 reconstructions of a single historical action. Attempt A. It matches the manuscript illustration beautifully. The posture looks perfect. In drills, it works. Under resistance, it collapses. The opponent counters easily. Attempt B. It looks slightly wrong compared to the image. But under pressure, it holds up, it wins exchanges, it feels tactically sound. Attempt C. It matches the text description precisely, but it creates contradictions elsewhere in the system. It breaks internal consistency. Which one is correct? Maybe none. Maybe all are partially right. Because decoding isn't finding a single hidden truth. It's navigating trade-offs, selecting the least wrong interpretation that survives the most constraints. That's not romantic, but it's honest. Are the tricks truly lost? So are the tricks gone? Not entirely. Some techniques are reconstructible with high confidence. When text, image, cross-source comparison, biomechanics, and stress testing align, confidence grows. But others remain plural, multiple viable readings. Because the sources were never meant to transmit motion alone. They assumed a master correcting your timing, adjusting your distance, testing your decision-making. The real lost element might not be a secret sword angle. It might be the pedagogy, the drills, the correction, the pressure testing culture, the judgment, cultivated in the room. Final button. We return to the manuscript page. Ink and parchment. Then a modern fencer freezes in the same pose. For a moment, the centuries collapse. The page didn't lose the art. We lost the room it was taught in. And until we rebuild that room, experimentally, imperfectly, honestly, the decoding will continue. Not as treasure hunting, but as dialogue between ink, steel, and the human body that was always meant to connect them. What do you think the real lost trick is? Share your thoughts, disagreements, and theories in the comments below.